Welcome to episode 3 of the Shotgun Jane Doe series that we're doing here today. Again, I've covered this in the first 2 videos, but I think it's important to say it every time. Why are we doing this? What are we doing? There are a lot of references to this Jane Doe on the internet, several YouTube videos about her, and she holds the record for the most exclusions from the NamUs database. So why am I doing this? There's a lot of misinformation out there. A lot of people are making posts and making videos just regurgitating known facts. And the known facts that were out there were passed word of mouth, you know. So there were some inconsistencies in there. What I've done is I've went back to original documents, thanking the Knoxville News Sentinel for helping me with that. That's the paper in the hometown where this happened at. Police departments, colleges, medical examiners, everybody overall, for the most part, through this have been very, very welcoming and very helpful in this. In the last little while, I think the sheriff's department in Knox County has kind of tightened up. I think they're maybe, tired of hearing from what they call civilians coming up with theories on this and possibilities on this. And there is a ton of my friends are police officers, and I understand where they're coming from. I'm an IT person, and it's kind of like me and my job when a server goes down, somebody calling me up, from their job and going, well, have you checked the flux capacitor, and I'm sitting there going, what, So I understand where they're coming from. But, if they're not going to, and I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, that I understand. Here's what I'm saying. I understand they have their hands full in the world that we live in today. They really do. And why not turn some of this stuff over to us? I mean, if I can get you a letter of recommendation from political leaders or from college professors or stuff like that saying I'm not a crackpot, why not let us help on this? That I don't understand. They're, kind of push back to accepting any kind of help. Now, I know there's some things we don't need to know and some things they hold back in their investigation. But anyway, I guess what I'm saying is I want these videos to reach some areas in the United States. And if you watch the episodes of this, you'll know what areas that we're wanting to reach. And try to jog somebody's memory. Try to get somebody to say, hey, I remember a girl, or I remember a girl that went missing, or I went to school with a girl that had these injuries, or, something like that. Anything like that's helpful. But what we're going to get in today is clothing and other accessory items that possibly could be helpful in identifying this person. Now, by accessory items, I mean, one, clothing, jewelry she may have worn, but also scientific accessory items. What does science tell us about what we know about this young lady? So, let's get started. The victim's clothing. What do we know about the victim's clothing? Now, one thing that the police department does have a problem with is posting pictures online of the crime scene. I do have pictures of the crime scene. One thing that I did is I cropped them and I blurred most of them out because there's really not a whole lot there that will be helpful in the picture other than color, logos, things like that. So at the time of the shooting, our Jane Doe was wearing a blue Miami's Dolphins jersey with the number 32 on it. Now there are people out there that have questioned, is the picture reversed? Could it be 23? No, it's 32, because if you look at the top picture there, you can see Dolphins is spelled the right direction, so we know that the other logo on the shirt is too. Now, why is this important, and why do I feel the need to post these pictures? The reason it's important is because if you look at where this shirt strikes her at the wrist, and the fit of the shirt, it's approximate to her size. And bear in mind that the men that were with her that night were larger men. And one of the things, remember Percy Preston, I think it was episode 2, we talked about him, said this was not the woman that was with the two men when they hijacked his car, or took control of his car. I shouldn't say hijack. But one of the things that he said it was a different person was based on the clothing that they wore. Well, the men said her clothing was worn out. We later gave her new clothing because we felt sorry for her and all this kind of stuff. These two large men just happened to have clothes that fit this woman this well. And these two men in East Tennessee happen to have a complete set of Miami Dolphins wear. I find that hard to believe. You got to realize that back in the 80s when this happened, there was no internet. You couldn't get on eBay or Amazon and order Miami Dolphins stuff in Tennessee. It just wasn't that easy. There were no sports stores that large here in East Tennessee. One of the first sports stores that opened at this time was in what was called East Town Mall, about 5 miles from where this happened, and they catered probably 90% to University of Tennessee stuff like that, and some Atlanta stuff. They didn't sell any Miami Dolphins stuff, and certainly not a complete set with a unique number on it like this. But bear in mind, Percy Preston said that the girl that was riding with him was not wearing these clothes. So the men said, oh, well, we gave her those clothes later. Well, there's no time. We've locked in a time from when they dropped Percy Preston off to when she was shot. They had 5 minutes. So that's probably something I'm going to dispute. But it could be a clue. But we also have to understand, if she was on the road a long time, if she was homeless, if she was walking the roads, hitchhiking, whatever the case may be, she could pick these clothes up anywhere. So don't want somebody excluded, in Indiana, when the family says, yeah, it looks like my relative, but she didn't have clothes like that. Remember, she could have picked these up along the way. She wore dirty white tennis shoes. Now, in the picture, if you zoom in on the shoe, it has a logo on it. We believe it or not, there are people on the internet that collect tennis shoes and actually study tennis shoes. One was very helpful in helping me identify this tennis shoe. This tennis shoe was made by a company called Trax, Traxx, and that company is still in business. And they were actually fairly helpful in it, in that they told me that they were in the 1980s up until 89, I think they said, that these shoes were sold exclusively at Kmart. Okay, well, maybe that's a clue. In one of the pictures of the body, you can see the bottom of the shoe and tell that the shoe is very well worn, which tells me she could have got it at a thrift store and already be worn, But if it wasn't, or if it wasn't that worn when she bought it, it tells me she did a lot of walking. At the time of her death, the victim was wearing the worn out white tennis shoes. Again, we can tell that she walked a bit. And I think we assume that. Hitchhikers, even back then, maybe hitchhikers were more likely to be picked up back then, but there were less cars. Wouldn't it be great? And I think this is so far-fetched, but for this to hit somebody and their grandfather says, I remember that girl, she did this here in town wearing those clothes and she was locked up, and it's far-fetched, but it's something that I have to think about and hope for. She had on a cheap chain link bracelet. Maybe it was given to her by a family member. Maybe it was given to her by somebody that's going to recognize it, remember it. These bracelets were very, very popular at the time in the 80s. I know my brothers had one. I didn't, but what I do remember about it was that the plating on it was very, very cheap. And within a matter of a month or so, the plating would start to wear off and it would get this tarnished look that this one has now. This was taken off the wrist of the young lady after she was shot. So it was tarnished, but these were usually silver or a light gold color when they were new. Very, very popular in the 80s. Most of them didn't have clasp. You just slid it over your wrist and it dangled. Some did have a clasp. Some had a folding clasp on it. But these were sold all over everywhere. Like I say, it was popular and things you could find in many roadside stores back in the day. So that's the identifiers as far as what she had on, what she was wearing. The BH tattoo that we covered in a previous video could be an identifier along these lines. So let's get into where she was from, and this is probably to me the most important part of the videos that we're going to do. Isotope testing done by the Smithsonian Institute on bones from this Jane Doe tell us that our Jane Doe spent substantial time in one of the following states: Maryland, Pennsylvania, Virginia, West Virginia, New Jersey, Ohio, Michigan, Indiana. Remember our thoughts about the clue about Indiana. Illinois, or Minnesota. And if you don't remember the clue about Indiana, you're not watching these in order. Go back, I think it was episode 2, had the clue about Tina from Indiana. Now, on the video from the Sheriff's Department, you had a map. And one thing that I will just say glaringly was left out of their map, I believe, was the state of Virginia was not covered. Here's a map of where the isotope testing says that this girl was from. Now, I'm going to cover this again because this cannot be more important. Isotope testing, how reliable is it? We know it's fairly reliable. It hasn't been around long enough to really have been peer tested that much and incident tested. But bear in mind that when the isotope testing was first done, it said she was from the southeast. When the next round of isotope testing was done, it had moved the states farther north. So, again, I don't want someone excluded on this. I want this to be used as a tool to say, okay, maybe she spent time in these states. Now, what isotope testing means is that, let's say that our girl is from Indiana. All isotope testing means that she spent a substantial amount of her life in Indiana. It does not mean she was born there. It does not mean that she went missing from there. And so many people exclude candidates for this girl based on, well, this candidate's not from one of these states. Listen, as I said before, if I'm from Indiana, I'm born there. And at 18, I take out hitchhiking. I make it to Arizona and I spend a year in Arizona, establish a life in Arizona, being from Indiana for all those years, my youth. And I go missing from Arizona. I'm reported missing from Arizona. I'm not reported missing from Indiana. And when my bones are found on the side of the road somewhere, my bones are going to show that the isotope testing is going to show that I'm from Indiana. And if you exclude everybody else, you're going to miss me because I'm going to be reported missing from Arizona, not Indiana. Now, I appreciate people looking at this and using the isotope testing as a tool, but be careful, really. And this goes for sheriff's departments too, who maybe are smaller and don't understand isotope testing and the problems with it, is that don't exclude anybody based on this. Now, I don't know how exclusions are done on NamUs. I really don't. I hear so many different ways. And are all the exclusions based on DNA? Which we have DNA for our candidate or our Jane Doe. If so, then that's fine. But if some of them are excluded because of hair color or things like that, I think maybe we need to go back and look at those again. But basically my point is rule no person out based on isotope testing alone. Now, one thing I want to do, and the next thing that I'm going to do is look at some questions that have come about since we've been doing this. Some of the questions have been posed to me on various forums on the internet and even in person by some of the people that I've asked to help me with this. One, the maker of her synthesis plate, I believe in her ankle, said they didn't keep track of where the plates were distributed once they were made and shipped, but they did believe the plate was done in 1985 to 1986 based off the model that was used. Now, that was based on what years that model was mostly used. Now, how did I find this? I'm in the IT department, and I have a vendor who also does business with Synthesis. And he got me in touch with their IT person. As I said, I'm an IT person where I work. And their IT guy did some digging for me and asked the upper management. And they said that a more accurate estimate, if I wanted to cover all years that particular plate was used, would be 1982 through 1988. Now, we can rule out probably 87 and 88 because it's when our young lady was found. But the plate, based on the type of plate that she had, was used from 82 to 88. There are no records who they sold them to, didn't have serial numbers, all they had was model numbers. Again, her shoes, I get asked a lot about that. I did a little article on her shoes one time about my research into her shoes and how we found out what model they were and all that. Her shoes are quite old and worn, which is what the men indicated to law enforcement when interviewed, which is why they say they gave her the jersey. At one time, there was a photo of the shoes. They're very worn and dirty. They're not new shoes. I have a photo of the shoes. It's a lesser quality than what I'm told originally existed. I've told you about the experts out there, and there are people. If you had her socks, you could have somebody that could identify her socks. It's an amazing time that we live in. But I do want to say that we've established her shoes were made at Kmart. But just because they were sold at Kmart doesn't mean she didn't get them at a shelter. Somebody didn't give them to her. She didn't find them somewhere. I would like to know. I guess one of my questions now, and maybe I've waited a year too long to ask this. What states in the 1980s had Kmart's? I know it was big here in East Tennessee, um, and I probably feel that most states did, but I don't know. It's just something that I'd like to look into. It's been reported that Sarah or Shotgun Jane Doe had a hysterectomy, which is wrong. According to the autopsy, the uterus is present and is pale but otherwise within normal limits. Both left and right ovaries are plastered to the pelvis. I can only tell you, I'm not an expert on this. The medical examiner, retired medical examiner I took the notes to, had never seen the body. Let's get that out there. But from the report and the notes I gave her, she opines that Shotgun Jane Doe suffered from a prolonged, at least a year, pelvic inflammatory disease. The scar was likely the result of trauma surgery that possibly could have been related to other injuries that she had previously had, which we've established those. I think that was in episode 1. Pelvic inflammatory disease most likely could be related to blunt force trauma, not a venereal disease that was suggested in the 80s. There was no hysterectomy. She most likely had given birth to at least one child. Now, those are speculations. The person we showed the paperwork to had not seen the body, had not examined the body, and it's, almost 40 years later. All they can opine to is on their experience, looking at the paperwork, which CNN does this all the time. We were trying to figure out when and where pants like hers were worn. One girl from the South said she didn't think they were popular there. I think that was on web sleuths, and was trying to figure out if they were parachute pants or fabric. Well, they weren't parachute pants. That came along just about this time. Parachute pants, you're right, did come about this time. But these were more workout pants. They were, and you didn't buy them really to work out in. You bought them because you supported a team or whatever. I don't think many people actually went to the gym and worked out in them. But being a teen at the time, I can tell you these pants were popular. Girls wore them at my high school at that time. And what I can't get past that the pants, and you saw it in the picture, were relative to her size. Light blue and a silky feeling nylon material, and these pants had a cotton lining in them. The jersey was an exact match to the pants, and while a bit large for the girl, were women's size, not men's. Leads me to believe these clothes did not come from men. Don't know that, could have. But, I question that. One of the questions, and I found this one very, very interesting. How close was the homeowner to Jane when she was shot? According to the girl that worked on her skull, what she said, she was literally shot point blank, straight on. The entry was towards the left side of her head as she started to turn away from the shotgun. She wasn't shot point blank because there was a door between them. We know that. We have no way to know that she was turning her head to turn away from the shotgun. There's no time to turn away from a shotgun. You're standing on the other side of the door. You're not going to hear a click. You're not going to hear this. She pulls the button by the trigger. By the time she pulls the trigger, it's too late to turn away. So how far away was she? The detective we talked to said probably 4 to 6 feet. The reason that we arrive at that is that We're giving her a little room. If you're beating on a door, you don't have the side of your head up against the door. You're 18 inches, 2 feet away from the door, reaching with your hand, beating on the door. But the door had 6 panes of glass. This girl shot through the door and only broke 1 pane. If you've ever shot a shotgun, some people call them scatter guns. When you shoot a shotgun, a bullet doesn't come out. Multiple projectiles come out, and the minute they leave the barrel, not being a rifled barrel, the minute they leave the barrel, the pellets start distributing up, down, right, and left. They don't travel in a straight line. So to have only shot one of the panes, and the panes were very close together, tells us that the shotgun was within 3 feet of the door, as you would think it probably would be. Little note, this has nothing to do with this. When I was just a little boy, a man tried to come in on my grandmother. My grandmother lived in what's called Gatlinburg now, and tried to come in on my grandmother. My grandmother shot him through the door. So with that, only one of the 6 panes being broke, we know that the shotgun was fairly close to the door, within 3 feet. Given that she was 2 feet, probably 18 inches, 2 feet from the door on the outside, that gives us about 5 feet, given 6 inches both ways for a margin of error. They were probably 6 feet apart, 4 to 6 feet. Was Shotgun Jane Doe by the door, or was she by the porch pole support? It was said that Shotgun Jane Doe had her arms and legs wrapped around the porch pole. Now, who said that? One of the men that was with her said that she had gone insane, nuts, erratic, or whatever, and they were trying to drag her away from the house, and she had her arms wrapped around the post on the porch. That doesn't hold water. She, in one of the pictures of the crime scene, it does look like maybe she is in a position where she could have been holding the pole, but when you're shot by a shotgun, you don't just fall straight down. There is a blast. It's not like you see in movies where they fly 10 or 15 feet. That doesn't happen. But the porch, if you take the crime scene photos and give what they say her height was and use that to measure the porch was approximately 6 feet from the door to the steps. Jane was on her side, and while she was near the post, she was not around it. The only mention of that, again, was by one of the men that was with her. I want to point out, the homeowner says Shotgun Jane Doe was pounding on the door. The man says she was holding the pole. 6 feet from basically the pole to the door, unless she had 6 foot long arms, one of them is lying. And in this, I trust the homeowner. There's no reason not to trust them. So, I don't think she was holding onto the pole. I questioned greatly whether they were trying to drag her away from the house. They could have been, because I truly, my belief deep down, until somebody shows me evidence otherwise, she was trying to get away from these men. I truly believe that. So, no, she wasn't holding the pole. In my opinion, it doesn't hold with what else we know. You can't hold that pole and pound on the door 6 feet away. So, I do kind of question that. Again, what's our expectations in putting these out? One of the things I decided to do, I originally recorded this as all one video. And it was about an hour and 15 minutes. And then I got to thinking, sometimes I have a very short attention span. I thought, there is a lot of times I pull up a video on YouTube and I go, well, I don't have time to watch that. But a shorter video, I thought more people might go, oh, I'll watch that, having lunch on their lunchtime or whatever at work. And So I decided to break it up, and I fear in doing that that it becomes scattered. Maybe somebody watches one, not the rest of them. So I do want to report on several of these videos what our expectations are. I hope that somebody sees this, has even if you don't know this person, even if you have no connection to this person, in your state, urge a news media, send it to a news media in your state, ask them to do a public interest piece on this. We're at 40 years. We're approaching the time that we're probably at the end of our chain of being able to identify this young lady and give her a home. But if you have any connection to news media, your small town papers, anything, send this to them. Give them a chance to put it out there. Some will, some won't. That's fine. If they want to call me, if they want to email me, interview me, I'm more than welcome to talk to them. And I have other people that are. I guess my thing is that I hope that someone will see this and say, I knew that girl, or I remember a girl when I was in school that had similar injuries. I remember a girl that was in a car wreck. I remember a girl that went missing in my community. Anything like that. And if you don't want to go to the police, that's fine. You know, shotgunjanedoe@gmail.com. Send us an email. We'll follow up on anything, anywhere. And our thing on this is to get it out there to people who don't visit web sleuths, who don't live here in East Tennessee, who don't necessarily find an interest in Jane Doe's and look them up on the internet. And I think that's 90% of the people. I think people like me are very very in the minority. I think everyone would love to find this girl a home, but people don't have the interest in, finding out just how many of these girls there are across the United States. And there's hundreds, if not thousands, of these girls that need to find a home. If you want more information or you want to be involved in the conversation, Web Sleuths, great place to go there. It's free. Sign up. Find the string in their forum, Knox County Shotgun Jane Doe White Female 607 UFTN. It's there on the screen. Join our conversation. I'm there. Anytime you want to talk, be glad to talk to you one-on-one. And there's tons of people on there that know as much, if not more, than I do about this young lady. A great resource, whether you're researching our girl or one of the others. If you have a tip or even an idea, and bear in mind, nothing is too small, email us at shotgunjanedoe@gmail.com. Again, no tip is too small or insignificant. Even an opinion. I'll take an opinion because it may be something I go, I'd never thought about that. Or call the Knox County, Tennessee Cold Case Squad at 865-215-3705 or coldcase@knoxsheriff.org. There again is the picture of our Jane Doe. As I've covered in one of the other of these 3 videos, don't know how accurate that is. Please watch all 3 videos to get specific characteristics, specific heights, true hair color that we know of. These drawings were based on a corpse that had at least a third of its head removed. So I don't know how accurate this is. I am told by one person who was on the scene that night that this hair color is very, very similar. So looks kind of a reddish brown to me. She did have brown eyes. Bear in mind that watched the I think it was either the first or second video that had her long-term injuries healed, broken bones, a missing tooth, things like that. Go through these videos, and if there's any way in the world that you can help us with this, we would greatly appreciate it. Even ideas, suggestions, possibilities, people that you remember as a kid. We can do the legwork if you'll help us. Thank you.